My name is Arvan Yunesa. I'm from K4-19 and my name is 1901831. And in this video, I will explain about the function of and types of educational research. Welcome to Introduction to Educational Research. Today's video will deal with the function of and the types of educational research. Well, the objectives are to list and discuss the four functions of educational research. First function is basic research, second function is applied research, evaluation research, and action research. Second objective, to present an overview of the various types of educational research, and the third objective is to compare and contrast the qualitative and quantitative approaches to research methodologies. Well, in terms of the function, let's start out with basic research. A basic research involves the process of collecting and analyzing information to develop and to create theories or to enhance theories, to expand on theories, and it's your sort of stereotypical horn-rimmed glasses, white lab coat scientist in a lab watching the red around maze and things like that. Very strict lab condition and very strict control of variable, and basic research is not really concerned with the social utility of what they find, and it might be years before anything that is discovered in basic research actually trickle down and has some application in education. Also includes in basic research is the development of new product. The development of new product, not just theories, and some example of classic examples. Example of basic research in terms of education is the early work of B.F. Skinner and behaviorist and applied behavior analysis. I think this is true story during the when the Second World War was coming to an end, but the Axis and Allied power were rushing to create guidance system on missile because they had missile with weaponry attached to them, but they were very, very erratic. The guidance system were very erratic, and then they will fire at them, and there will be no way of knowing where they were gonna land. Well, Skinner, I think this is correct, word paper to the Department of Defense outlining his theory and outlining his experiment on using pigeon, and he claimed that he could create a guidance system using pigeon that will deliver the payload, a weapon, within 10 meters of the target. And of course the defense department didn't pay any attention to him, and so who knows if it will have worked or not, but that's an example of basic research. P.G. Piaget and his work and developmental psychology with children is another good example of basic research. So basic research is designed to develop or expand theories and to discover new knowledge. Applied research, on the other hand, its goal is to take the theories that have been developed by basic research and to test them out in real life. In applied setting, like classroom or educational or social work or in psychology, and it supplies data that support, guides, or revise theories developed by basic research, and it's designed to solve current educational problems and takes a look at what works and what doesn't work. And you can take a look at the graphic here in talk about basic research and then applied research. The third function of research is evaluation, and basic and applied research are interested in developing theories and then taking these theories out into applied setting, and in our case educational setting, and putting the theories to the test to see if they working. And evaluation research is interest in making decision about quality, effectiveness, or the value of educational program or product or practice. and the focus is on making decision about effectiveness and not on the development of new knowledge. Evaluation research is not interested in developing new knowledge, and there is formative evaluation research, which monitor the ongoing progress of program, product, or practice. So while the actual program or product is being used as ongoing evaluation, that's formative evaluation. And summative evaluation research is judging the overall impact of a program, product, or practice when it has been implemented and it is complete, and that's evaluation research. And the final function of research is the action research model, and it uses the scientific approach and scientific methodology to solve local problems, and it's research that is done by teacher for teacher. In fact, you will probably use an action research model in your thesis or your master field project. It's a systematic inquiry into one's own teaching. Also, in fact, I just received an email from a student I had 1 year ago who just completed her master thesis. She did a thesis, a scientific study in her classroom, and she used the piece of software that I had developed, and I won't bore you with the software or anything like that, but she used the software to evaluate her own teaching. And so this was a systematic inquiry into her own teaching, and she did a wonderful job. It was a really nice thesis. Now I will suggest that you read chapter 1 in your textbook, and you will see that there are many different models for action research, but they all have basically the same thing: the identification of a problem, the development of a plan, acting on the plan or implementing the plan, observing and collecting data on how the plan is working out, and then reflecting and evaluating and revising the plan if necessary, and that's the action research model. And again, you probably will use some form of this in your master thesis or your field project. So those are the function of educational research: is basic research, applied research, evaluative research, and then action research. Now we're going to take a look at the big picture, the overall picture of the types of educational research. And don't get blown away by this. There are many different types, and we will go over the ones that are relevant and most important for you. So we have here types of educational research. Now there are two basic, actually there are three, but picture here are just two of the major scientific paradigms or ways of answering and asking questions. One is called the quantitative research methodologies, and all of these are quantitative research methodologies. Then the other is called the qualitative research methodologies, and all of these are considered qualitative research methodologies. And in the next screen, we will discuss quantitative and qualitative research methodologies. Just let me say this: qualitative research methodologies generally our scientific studies that collect data and report the data in terms of number, whether it's just descriptive statistic or whether like mean, median, and mode, and the range and standard deviation, or whether it's inferential statistic, where inference are drawn and there are hypotheses and hypothesis testing. So that is the quantitative research methodologies are quite different. They are not interested in numbers and in collecting and counting. They are interested in creating narratives and understanding the social situation that they are looking at. But we'll go into this what's in the next screen. For now, on the quantitative research methodologies, we have experimental research methodologies. The example of true experimental is pre-group test. In quasi-experimental is non-qualifying group design. You hypothesize that a new after-school program will lead to higher grades. Pre-experimental example is a teacher using a new instructional methods for their class. In single case example is measure how many students can finish the task in 2 minutes. In ABAB design, the example is using clicker case for topic A and lecture for topic B. In multiple baseline example is this design will test whether the treatment improves school performance or whether the student was struggling with the current material but improve naturally as the school year progress. Multiple probe example is changing criterion. A researcher studying the effectiveness of money in reducing caffeine. In multi-element research is research methodology example is instruction effectiveness of across 4 students. In non-experimental descriptive correctional example is imprisonment, parole, and probation. In survey, the example is to gather feedback and opinion from both the learner and educator, and they use this finding to drive continual improvement across any number of educational areas. In casual comparative, the example is to determine the significant difference in math course grades between 2 groups of elementary school students when one group has completed a math tutoring course. In qualitative research methodologies, there are interactive and non-interactive. In interactive, there are ethnography. The example is a researcher spent an entire month in an elementary school classroom in an effort to describe the culture of the classroom. Second, phenomenological methodologies. The example is studying the green flash that something happened just after sunset or just before sunrise. In case study, the example is stories that are used as a teaching tool to show the application of a theory or concept to real situation. Grounded theory example is a research approach to study process, interaction, and action for the purpose of developing middle-range theories of substantive problems that people experience. In non-interactive, there are historical. The example of historical methodologies is the study of problem of education making use of historical source and technique in order to involve universal generalization and principles. Second is critical analysis. The example is read an article that depicts the summary of your favorite book or movie. Alright, so let's take a look at the difference between these quantitative research methodologies and qualitative research methodologies. And we'll look at them in terms of their approach, their purpose, their focus, their plan, a research plan, and their data analysis. While quantitative research methodologies are educative in nature, they work from the top down, so there are theories. Some basic researchers, let's say, come up with a theory that creates some hypothesis, that they collect data to test this hypothesis, and then they're using inferential and descriptive statistics. They either confirm or reject the hypothesis. So it works from the top down, whereas the qualitative is totally opposite. It works from the bottom up. It starts out by just a series of observation, no hypothesis, no question, and well, some question or ideas, and it collects data, and then it looks at this data in terms of what kind of patterns are developed, and then it's come to some tentative hypothesis, and then it may on the basis of this tentative hypothesis develop a theory. But this work totally different. This work from the bottom up. In the 70s early in Chicago, at the University of Chicago, it was in Pisco Minister Claude Humphreys. I believe his name was. By the way, the University of Chicago at the same time was very big into qualitative research. They were on one of the leading university, I believe. Well, anyways, he was Episcopal minister, and he was pastor to be a community that has a large percentage of gay parishioners, and so he became very interested in the problem and difficulties that gays professor said, and from counseling them and talking with them, he found out that heterosexual or self-identified heterosexual and homosexual men tend to have congregate in public bathrooms to have sex, and so this become very interesting to him, and so he decided to do his doctoral dissertation on this. Well, how do you do a scientific study on heterosexual and homosexual men who meet in private bedroom to have sex? Well, they could do a quantitative study, could take a survey or anything like. Well, I mean, he could, but he probably will not get any valid answer from that. So what he did is he decided to do a qualitative piece of research and start out with observation. So he showed up in public bathroom around Chicago for 2 years. What he did find out, which made this a little simpler for him, is that for a homosexual act to take a place in a public bathroom between two individuals, you need 3 people, and the third person is referred to as the watch queen. And watch queen, so he start to go to bathroom and he hang out, and people might proposition, but somebody just stood there, and so eventually he become identified as a watch queen, and so become trusted. So he was able them to collect all kind of data. 2 years of collecting data. In fact, his doctoral dissertation is a fascinating book. He has diagram of all the bedroom and the pattern and how they walk out around, and that interesting things came out. He discovered a lot of things. A couple of things, there were never any talking ghosts in this situation, always done by gesture and high inflection and things like that. Anyways, that a piece of qualitative research methodology. He immersed himself in that sculpture so that he could understand it. Okay, so now back to the purpose of the qualitative is theory testing, prediction establishing facts, and hypothesis testing. Hypothesis. The purpose of qualitative is describing multiple realities, developing deep understanding, capturing everyday life and human perspective. That's a very, very different purpose. Here the focus for quantitative isolate variable, use large sample, and usually random, is often anonymous to participant, collects data using tests and formal instrument. For qualitative, it's quite different. The focus, the researchers is looking at the full context, and the researcher interacts with the participant, collects data face to face from participant. The researchers plan in quantitative. The research plan in quantitative is to develop before this study is even initiated, and it's structured and its proposal is formal. In quantitative, it begins with an initial idea that evolves as the researchers learn more about participant and setting, and it's very flexible and change as the researcher is collecting more data and constantly analyzing it. The shift and changes from one direction to another in its fine turn out. Now data analysis, as we did say, is usually statistical with descriptive and inferential statistics for quantitative, and it's mainly interpretive descriptive with extensive narrative for the qualitative. So these are two entirely different paradigms, entirely different ways of gaining information about a topic. Now most of the large research that goes on now that is federally funded with big grants. That is my explanation in types and function of educational research. Thank you.